Hey, and welcome to the Meditations and Musings podcast. I'm Elena Lipson. I'm a mama, I'm a wife, and I'm the founder of the Divine Self-Care Circle membership and the Virtual Retreat Academy. I don't believe that you have to sacrifice your body, your health, or your family in order to create true abundance and prosperity. I believe in living based on the divine feminine metrics of success, and these include pleasure, play, ease, grace, and a slower pace. Each week, I'll bring you 1 to 2 new episodes. One of these will be a guided meditation that you don't have to do on the meditation pillow, and the other will be a conversation to help you access your inner wisdom, to ignite abundance, and inspire others to do the same. I invite you to join me on this journey back to the magic of a divinely aligned and well cared for you. And now, join me for today's episode.
Welcome back to the Meditations and Musings podcast. This is Elena Lipson, your self-care coach, your inner work mentor. And today we are talking about all things tiny. Tiny habits make big magic. I've talked about micro moments of self-care in the past here and how there's like a compound effect of self-care habits that can really make a difference over time. And the reason I'm recording this again is because I've been hearing more and more clients get overwhelmed and feel like they're stuck in a place of emotional overwhelm, physical overwhelm, and business overwhelm, feeling like there's so much to do, so little time, and they feel like they have to make these massive leaps of faith or like start over from scratch or just change everything in order to find any success or like lasting change. And there are definitely times where leaps of faith and changing everything up, like cleaning off that desk, throwing everything out and starting over is a great thing to do, unless it's coming from a place of not self-doubt necessarily, but it's coming from a place of, like feeling like you're comparing yourself to someone else doing something new. So for example, you are working, actually I had just a coaching client just today, feeling like, how in the world, she said, I'm overwhelmed and how am I going to manage all the things I have to do? And she felt like she had to just stop everything and like literally stop everything. And the reason we get overwhelmed with too many things and feeling like we have to either burn everything down or stop everything is because it is a lot to do. Like getting to a destination that you want to go to, especially if you're not fully clear, can be really overwhelming. Like you want to create something or build something, or you want to achieve a change in your life, whether it's losing weight or finding a relationship or building a business, whatever those big, big picture goals are. There's a lot of things to do between now and wherever you're going, right? Especially if the goal isn't fully clear to you. Like if it's not super clear what you're creating, you're sort of creating as you go, which I tend to attract a lot of intuitive, like I'm not 100% sure what I want to create, but I know where I'm going kind of people. Maybe because I'm kind of that way as well. Like I do have a balance of strategic and intuitive, create as I go versus have a clear plan. I like a balance in between. So I can definitely myself get caught up in this perception of feeling like I'm not going fast enough, right? And feeling like if it's not working, I need to start over. I'm someone who really loves to start something. So the finish line can feel a little distant. And this is where tiny habits make big magic comes in, because you've had the experience of like feeling like you're not making progress, and all of a sudden you look back and like, oh my gosh, I've done so much. I've created, like for me, for this podcast, like I'm at episode in my 200s, right? But it felt like, am I ever going to get to 200 episodes? Am I ever going to get to like 50,000, 60,000, 100,000 downloads? Because when you're starting, it feels like really big. And if I kept stopping every time I felt discouraged or overwhelmed, I would never have done the 200 plus episodes that it took to get me here, right? So it's a really important perception, lesson, view to take whenever you're making changes. It's rarely going to be the massive change that gives you the most satisfaction and the most quote unquote success in your definition. It's going to be the little tiny things done day after day after day that compound over time, that all of a sudden you can look back and say like, wow, I made it somehow. Like when you're running or jogging or walking, every step can feel like a lot until all of a sudden you get to where you're going. You're like, oh my gosh, I just totally walked 5 miles or 10 miles, or I ran 3 miles for the first time, but you did it step by step by step, right? You can't just leap and all of a sudden become a marathon winner. You have to train for it. You have to put in the many, many steps along the way, which is why it's really important to choose what you're doing and make sure that it's bringing you some sense of joy, satisfaction, pleasure along the way. Right? I would never encourage someone to make a change that involves things that they hate. And of course, you have to look at that a little bit more closely. Is it just resistance, or is it something you hate doing? Like if you hate writing, why would you write a book? Right? If you hate running, why would you choose to do a marathon unless you're doing it for some other external reason to prove to someone else? Like I get the fact that not everything has to be pleasurable along the journey. Not everything will be, but it's really important to choose to do something that you actually enjoy the process of learning and doing. But that doesn't mean that it cuts out any difficulty or resistance or I don't know, just wishing you weren't doing it at some points, right? So the other piece about tiny habits make big magic is that, say, for example, you start a new habit, like waking up early or, a daily journaling practice, whatever it is. You'll never go back to zero. So to me, when you're starting a new habit, you're actually taking on this entire idea of personal development because you want to do something, be something, create something different than what you are right now, which means you're developing as a person, right? And I don't mean like that whole personal development genre that turns a lot of people off. I just mean that you're growing, you're changing, you're evolving. And if it turns you off to do that, then you're probably not in the right place, because we talk all about that here. So if you're here, I know you're someone who is interested in shifting things, evolving things, releasing things that no longer serve, right? Which is also part of growth and evolution, letting go of things, not just always building and creating. Sometimes you're just releasing and letting go of things. That could be a habit in itself as well. The habit of letting go of things that no longer serve. So if you're starting a new habit like waking up early or starting journaling or drinking more water, whatever, if it's a health, self-care based habit, and say you start it for like a week, right? For the first time, you're doing it. And then a week later, you miss a day or two. When you decide to start up again, you're not starting from zero. What I mean is, somewhere in your neural connections, you've already created a neural pathway for getting up at, like, say, 6 a.m. But you haven't made that connection deep enough or strong enough to continue. But when you do it again, after having not done it for a few days, it's not like you're doing it for the first time. You already know in your body what it feels like. You know what success doing that habit feels like. And so it's actually much easier to tap back in to say, okay, I know how success feels in this. I know that if I just get myself up out of bed and wash my face with cold water, then I'll be fine, right? So there's usually like a trigger of success. One of the things I've loved to do recently, and I've learned this particular habit from Mel Robbins, where she wrote this, I think it's a whole book now, like the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, get up kind of habit. But in my mind, it turns into that level up song, like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, level up, level up. Like, so now, instead of lingering in bed, which is, I love to be in bed. Like, one of the things that I do now is when I get up, like I actually do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then I get up and I do my meditation, I do my movement, and I do my writing, all the things that I do. But it really works. So the trick is to find what works for you. For example, when I was in my 20s, I believe, even earlier, I think it was in my teens, for a whole summer, I worked at a health and racket club in New York City. And they also let you work out there. So like, say my shift started at 9, I wanted to be there at like 6:30 a.m. so I can work out at the gym. which required me to wake up at 5:30 or 5:45 in the morning, which was really dark and really cold. But I knew, because I had tried it for a few times and it really worked well, like if I could just get myself out of bed and wash my face with really cold water, like I mentioned earlier, I was good to go. Like I was up and ready to go because I already had everything, my bag packed. My bag was packed from the night before. And so all I had to do was like wash my face, throw on my gym stuff and go. So if I can just tell myself that, like, just get up and wash your face, you'll be good to go, I knew that I was okay. These days, it's more like, just get up and you'll have a hot cup of coffee in a little while. Like that gets me out of bed these days. So it's sometimes those little tiny habits over time that you start building that groove where you start noticing the big magic is happening. Because when you start being consistent with those tiny habits, you can create amazing things. You can create fitness for yourself. You can create a whole book, right? Another example is one of the things I was doing, or I am in the process of doing right now, which you might have heard me speak about before, is I'm writing a book. And that requires me to, write and edit. And so I was into the habit prior to shutdown. I was into the habit of writing at coffee shops, which I can't do anymore. Or I can't do it consistently anyway, and at the time that works for me. So I started a new habit, which was getting up early and going downstairs, getting my dog, bringing her back up, grabbing a cup of coffee and some lemon water, and then just basically snuggling back into bed and writing. And giving myself permission to do a new habit in a way that felt really, really cozy and good for me. I was able to get so much writing done over the next, I think I did it for like a week and a half because I just had a few chapters to get done. And now it's become one of my favorite weekend writing habits where I wake up early, the house is still asleep. I go downstairs, get my dog and my coffee and my water, and I basically get back into bed for a few hours and I write and I edit. And it's such a great habit. But now when I do it, it's not like I'm doing it for the first time because it actually taps back into a feeling of joy and accomplishment and satisfaction that I created when I did the habit the first time. So again, you're never starting at zero. So if you want to pick up a habit that you've done before, or if you want to start a new habit, just think about the tiniest, most viable, simplest aspect of that habit. Like what would actually be a really fun reward, or what would be a really simple like celebration for yourself. Like for me, it's as simple as a really good cup of hot coffee, right? To get up and do some writing in the morning. And at the root of all of this, of these tiny habits make big magic, I think one of the most important tiny habits that you can give to yourself is to be very intentional about keeping promises to yourself and staying in integrity. And tiny habits are like a really good way to practice, because once you know you can keep tiny habits and make them like positive and successful over time, that's when you start building up that muscle to try new things, because you know that you have the ability and the capacity to keep a promise to yourself. Keeping promises to yourself and staying in integrity with yourself is probably one of the key make it or break it elements of doing anything new. And believe me, I've been on the light side of this and on the dark side of this. Like I'm really good at keeping promises to myself, but once I get into a spiral of like missing one thing that I wanted to do but I don't do, it's very easy to continue down that slope. And before you know it, a month has gone by, you're like, oh my gosh, I still haven't done that thing that I've wanted to do. So this is where it's really powerful to know, like, okay, I've done this before. I'm not starting from zero. I know how to do this. I just need to kick over that little moment of self-doubt to say like, okay, I'm scared, but I can do this anyway. Just like getting up in the morning, like I'm sleepy, but I know that once I get up and get dressed and wash my face with cold water, I will be so much happier. Like you need to give yourself that tiny trigger, that tiny celebration, that tiny win in order to do the bigger things. Because otherwise it's really easy to slip down that slope of, oh, well, it doesn't matter anyway. And like, I know for me, like the habit of getting up in the morning and moving my body is a non-negotiable. And not because of like weight or I don't know, it's not because of success. It's really because of mental wellness. Like, I know what happens to me if I don't move my body, if I don't exercise, if I don't get my thoughts on paper. I get very, like, I will slide into depression. I will slide into a place of looking at things through the lens of impossibility instead of knowing that I have limitless possibility, infinite possibilities. But for me, the success habit, the tiny success habit, is getting out of bed every morning and moving my body in whatever way I choose to. And for me, that will change over time. I'll do like a season of dance. Well, dance is pretty much always standard no matter what, but I'll do like yoga, then I'll do some weight training, then I'll do combination of both, then I'll do some like dance lessons in the morning. You know, it just depends on the season of my life, but there's always something. And then I always do some form of writing and release and intention setting. And then I always do some sort of meditation. And I teach all of this in my Magic Morning Habit. So if you haven't grabbed it yet, make sure you go to the notes section of this episode or in my bio of my Instagram. I forgot what I was going to say for a second. And that's Elena_Lipson. You can check it out there. It's free for now. It might change very soon. So if you haven't grabbed it yet, this is a good time to do it, because it might actually, I'm considering making it into a paid course, because there's so much in there now. There's like 4 curated playlists. There's a workbook you can print out. There's a video. There's a lot. It's like a whole course. So if you haven't grabbed it yet, now is the time before it actually has a price tag on it, which will be still totally worth it. But that's really how I started. Like over a decade ago, I started this little morning practice that has now turned into truly a pillar of the work that I teach in the circle, in my own personal practice, and in creating sustainable change. So if you're going to choose one tiny habit, my suggestion is start with the Magic Morning Habit. And it will be the thing that brings you alive. It'll be the thing that creates enthusiasm and energy in your vibration. It'll be the thing that helps you manifest. It'll be the thing that helps you to get clear on your vision and mission and purpose. So yes, it's free for now. So I suggest you get it. And then if you want to dive deeper, of course, as you know, my circle is now always open. The price is going to be going up in a few months in 2021. If you're listening to this now, it's 2020, it's October. So right now you have an opportunity to do a 1-month trial for just $27. And it is in the link in the show notes as well. It's the only place you can get it. And if you have any questions, just shoot me a DM over on Instagram. But I want you to really consider if there are changes that you want to make in your life or in your work, the tiny habits can help you, because like change can scare people. But when it's a tiny habit with a quick win, you give yourself the opportunity to actually feel what success feels like. And you give yourself the best possible opportunity on a mind, body, soul level, that your ego and the resistance can actually not be so triggered if it's only a tiny little habit. You're like, oh, tiny habit, no big deal. If you want to change your entire life, the resistance will be massive. But if you want to start that change with a tiny habit, your ego will be like, oh, no big deal. So it's kind of like a way to trick your own subconscious, and then start down the road of showing it how good it can feel to do that new thing. So my takeaway and question for you is, what tiny habit are you willing to start today? I would love to hear your answer to the question. So grab a screenshot of the podcast, post it on Instagram, tag me in it, and answer the question, what tiny habit are you going to start today? Good luck with it. I know you can do it. Keep coming back for some more motivation and ideas here on how to do that. And if you have a specific question that you want to see answered on the podcast, please send it over to me at info@elenalipson.com or as a message on Instagram. And I will see you on the next episode of the Meditations and Musings podcast. Take care.
Thank you so much for listening and learning about the new divine self-care way of being in your life, business, and the bedroom based on the divine feminine metrics of success: pleasure, play, ease, grace, and a slower pace. If you're ready to bust the myth of overwhelm and tap into an inspired start to each day, I've put together a free video series for you to help you start each day with energy, inspiration, and ignite that inner pilot light which attracts joy, magic, and synchronicity. You can access my 3-step magic morning practice to help you ignite your inner light and attract the abundance that you're craving. Head on over to elenalipson.com/gift. And if you enjoyed this episode, I would so love if you share it with a friend, a sister, a mother, a daughter, and please leave a review. That is how the magic starts to ripple out. Here's wishing you a day full of beauty, magic, and divine self-care. I'll see you next time at the Meditations and Musings podcast.